Una Haganisinga, Zanavichu, Nabami Dachina. Welcome back, everyone, to Rising Warriors, Rachael Kulei. This is the first episode of season 2. So, welcome.
Wow.
So, we are on season 2 now, everyone. And today,
Congratulations.
thank you. And so,
Sorry.
today, oh, no, you're fine. So, today, we are starting with the history of corporal punishment and trauma to Indigenous children. So, my mother and I here, we've been talking about different traumas and spanking and how, it's changed the dynamic of Indigenous homes and how they treat children. So, we want to give you a little bit of the history and understanding, because if you understand the history, it will empower us, all of us, but most, Indigenous people to return to our traditional knowledge and how we'll raise the next 7 generations. So I asked Rochelle Kulei, my mother over here, also my co-partner in Zimee Wellness and Indigenous Sovereignty, to come on and speak with us and educate us today on the history of spanking, as we so call it. So go ahead and introduce yourself for those that don't know who you are. And real quick, I'm enrolled member of Shoshone Nation, the Northwest Band of Shoshone Nation. And so go ahead and introduce yourself and give a little bit about you.
So I'm Rochelle Kulei, and my last name is Nielsen, but I like using Rochelle Kulei as my artist name. I teach Native American, Intro to Native American Studies, and got to teach this term, Native American Art History in Canada. And I'm a mother of 3 children and a granddaughter. And I'm an educator, and plus I'm in practice of holistic healing. So you're my partner, Rachel's my partner, and I'm excited to talk about this because I don't know how we came up on the topic, but I just feel like it's so important to talk about why spanking and how that has changed that whole dynamic and how we traditionally would raise our children, and how that changed, and how boarding schools had a huge influence of changing the way we raised our children.
Mm-hmm.
So do you want me to go on?
Yeah,
Now
go ahead.
to introduce.
Go
Okay,
ahead.
so I did
Go
some
ahead.
major research and trying to figure out. I always think this way. When someone behaves a certain way, I always think, okay, what is behind that story? Why do they behave that way? And I know there's always something. There's always something that influences. And because I teach history in Intro to Native Studies, I think about all the influences that have on us, and I think about, I just know that when it comes to so many ways, the way we live and attitudes we adopt, there is a history behind that we are influenced by that
Mm-hmm.
create that attitude. So what I did some major research, and it's way too much to tell you. It's so long, but I'm just going to give you the basic foundation. Why did that change? How did it change? So we understand ourselves and our cultures, subcultures. We have to understand the history behind it. Then we can make changes for ourselves and our relatives. So corporal punishment, it sounds really harsh, right?
Uh-huh.
But corporal punishment, by definition, is to create forced pain intended to change or punish the people, children, in the person's behavior. So it's meant to change your behavior by causing pain on to you. Okay.
Uh-huh.
sounds pretty brutal. Okay.
Right.
Like why do we want to do that? But okay. So we had to go back far, far, far. Even our ancestors in Europe have to go back further. But internationally, like Greece and Rome and Israel and Egypt, they practiced corporal punishment. And they practiced it in their own religion, military, and school system. And so when you think about that, how they practice that, they had variations of practicing, like scourging and whipping and belts. And I mean, they did it all right, to all ages too. So then think about that influence, and then go to 1600s in the medieval time. In the medieval time, this is where churches had encouraged flagellating. That's self punishment. So, taking that whip and flagellating you, and that was meant to be like a self-discipline. Well, then the churches then at that time adopted that idea into the church and the school system. And back then, church and the schools were they were attached as an establishment. So they went together. Churches were the school system.
Right.
So that the whole idea was to, if it's meant to self-discipline, then now we're going to use corporal punishment in church and in the school system. And so it doesn't make sense to me, because it's, studying Christianity, it just doesn't make sense to me to cause harm upon another human being. Right. So that's the 1600s. By the, in the medieval times, by then 1600s, now it's a common practice. It's a huge trend. So they use corporal punishment, but now they do it in public. They want to make a spectacle out of when they beat you. So then that becomes a spectacle. So now if you understand Europe and just a little brief history internationally, and then when they move here to United States, to this country, this Turtle Island, changes the whole dynamic of how we raised our children. And then when our people were taken to boarding schools, and then that's the church influence, and how they use that in schools and how they disciplined. They used corporal punishment. They treated the children like they were in military, in encampments in prison. And so if you can imagine then what happens to the psyche, we do rebel. Okay. And I'm going to tell you, Indigenous people, we are stubborn.
Yes.
we're like, you could beat me to death. I am not doing what you just told me to do when you treat me that way. And we're super stubborn. I remember, I was forced to one of my aunties asked me to pick up my clothes and fold them, but she threw them at me, and I'm like, I'm not gonna pick those up, and I'm only like 4, right? But I remember clearly in my mind, like, I'm not gonna pick that up. You just threw it at me, and I'm not gonna do it. You could have asked me kindly, but you didn't, and she threw them at me and told me to pick them up. And I wouldn't do it because I'm like, go ahead and beat me. I don't care. I don't care. But we're stubborn. And that's why we didn't make great slaves either, because we're like, we're not going to be treated that way. But so as children, our babies that went to boarding schools, and they, 4 years old, and having this treatment they're not used to, it is the most saddest thing. But then they come from that, and then children imitate exactly how they were treated as children. Not always. We do try to make changes too, but it does have a huge influence on how we raise our children in the next generation. So it's also during that time in the 20th century, eventually philosophers and legal reformers were against corporal punishment, and they didn't feel that was the end all way to discipline someone, a child especially. So they were but we continue to do it, and we still do it. I was shocked how it's legal, to still punish in some schools throughout the United States. In Modoc, it's written in the law that it's still in Oregon, that it's still legal to lynch Indigenous people in Modoc people. I just learned that from one of my guest speakers, Kaila Farrell Smith, and that's still legal there. It hadn't been changed. So, but the most common form of punishment is to spank the bottom. And reason why is that's the most tender and painful place to punish someone. And so that's why they use the bottom. And oftentimes it was to take their pants down and then spank them right on the tushy, and that's super painful. So eventually there's some changes. There is changes that are happening right now. We're trying to make them, but I see a lot. It's so evident that I still see it happening. But Sweden is the first country in the 1979 to actually forbid corporal punishment in all the systems, school, military, and churches. They're the first ones, and in the home, to forbid corporal punishment. And so United Nations, the human rights, they forbid it, period. That's not a way to discipline anyone. So that according to their standards, they prohibit corporal punishments, period. So that's a little history. So then I want to go into the story of my mother. When it's, traditional we learn things, boarding schools, boarding schools, and they learn these things. My grandfather used to spank the kids a lot, and my great grandmother stepped in and got after him and said, "You keep doing that, you will run their spirit animal wild." And she, got after him for spanking, and he discontinued that because when someone brings that to your attention, that's not our way. That's not our way at all. I think it was like 2 years ago when we were in Sundance, the Sundance chief, she went outside the arbor and she had a vision, and she was sharing this beautiful dream, this vision with the people outside of the arbor. And she was talking about the little ones. And it was so cute because she called them our babies, and our babies, she said, they are awoke. They are fresh. They're new. The spirit world is right there next to them. They have access to the spirit world, and they're really, really young and vulnerable to us, right, who have to watch over them and oversee them. And she talked about how instead of to be in control, that yelling is frowned upon. You don't need to yell. You don't need to hit your children. You need to direct them and teach them. And she said you would, if they're getting into things, you go, no, baby, come over here. And then oh, and they're getting to something else. No, baby, come over here. And you kind of distract them and to keep them from getting into trouble. And so, but she was talking about these babies, how important it is to raise them in a good way and raise them to be, respectful, loving children. And so she was just, there's more she said, but that's a basic that I wanted to share, is that we need to start looking at it in a different way. And there's been lots of studies, especially in the Inuit tribes, where, and this is recent, and where when an adult yells at their child, they're frowned upon. The community pressures them in a way that like, what are you doing? And so the adult feels like, oh shoot, okay, tread back, redo this. But theirs is about, talking about how they help their children by storytelling. And I know we did this too, is storytelling. Many tribes do teachings through storytellings, and oftentimes they're of the supernatural. So they try to, maybe put fear in you so that you understand that something can happen if you go too far into the woods, right? In our language, it's unatsi. The unatsi is going to get you. So you're like, so you behave, and you don't go outside in the dark. And there's lots of mysterious things out there too. So, but that was the way it was to raise the babies, were to teach them stories. And another one is the community help. Then they are the ones that came in. Some tribes would designate an older sibling to be the parent, and they would be called the main one, and they would set those babies in place. But the idea was that you want the children to honor and respect the parents, and you want to be able to create that bond. When you start spanking and spanking and spanking, I was reading psychologically, what happens is you have to increase the pain in order to discipline them. The more you increase the pain, well, guess what? You've crossed the line in abuse. Now you're abusing your child. So I know that for me, I knew that spanking wasn't going to, it just didn't feel right. And my mother, I think I could count 2 times she spanked me. One, and I didn't even understand what it really was about either. So now I think about it was her frustration, not with us as the children. It was more about what was going on with her and her personal life, that she took that up on us. But the last spanking I got from her, I remember looking up at her, and my brother, we were both getting spanked, and we both looked at her and we wanted to laugh because it was the strangest thing to see on her face, to be so angry, but it was weird looking. And but my brother and I kept looking at each other. We wanted to laugh. And she's like, what are you guys doing? And we just started laughing. Then she spanked us, and then she broke a blood vessel in her hand. And she was like, oh, and we just started laughing. Then she started laughing, and we never knew why we were getting spanked either. We didn't know what that was about. But that was the last time she spanked us. And that was only a few times. And so how I learned from her, it was discussing, it was talking about, what did you learn from that? What did you get from that? What, and or if you don't want your child to bother things, then put them away for a while, especially when they're 2 and under. They like to touch everything. Then don't have them out for a while until they're ready to respect and have the understanding that it's something that's fragile that can break, right?
Mm-hmm.
So just put them away. Save yourself some time. But for me, I just knew that that wasn't something I was going to do. It doesn't fit right, doesn't feel right. And I remember this time, and maybe you could tell the story, but I remember this one time you were like 4 and Michael was 2 and around there. And you guys were supposed to, you knew your state, you always played in the yard, and you knew you were not supposed to go past the house. But for some reason that day you did. And I went out, I looked out the window and you weren't in the backyard. So I went outside and then you're not there. You're not in the front. I can't find you. Pretty soon the whole neighborhood is looking for you and Michael. You want to tell that story?
Yeah. So I wanted to play hide and go seek. That's what it was I wanted to play hide and go seek with the neighbor kids because the 3 boys across the street. So I was the only girl in my neighborhood. So I played with the boys. So I wanted to play hide and go seek. But then at the same time, we were going to go running and we were going to do something. And you said that, no, you need to stay close, that, if you want to go running, then, and you want to go do this with me, then you need to stay close. You need to listen. And the neighbor boys kept saying, no, we'll just be in the alley. We'll be right around the corner. So if anything, you could just hop right over the fence and, I'll be okay. And, you'll be fine. She won't get mad at you and you'll be okay. So I ended up like listening to them, but even deep down inside, I was like, I knew I was going to get in so much trouble. So I'm having a flashback now. So now I am like,
Clear,
go.
clear,
So
clear.
now, yeah, clear. So now I'm like, I remember I ended up, we had alleys in Portland. And so I went down the block and then I was across the block in the alley right there. And there was this big tree that you could hide in. And it had all these nice bushes around it. So like you could really hide in there, especially if you're little.
Mm-hmm.
Well, all of a sudden I heard you yelling and I got so scared that I was going to get in trouble that I hid even more. And so I could see people like passing by and watching, and Michael's like, let's go. And I'm like, no, we're going to get in trouble. And he's like, we're like, what do we do? And we're like, no, we're stuck here. And we're like, crap, now we did this. Now we have to go home. We're in trouble. We're going to get in so much trouble. And we're just like going through this battle. And then finally, I think that's when we decided that we were going to be unhidden and start to work our way back home. And that's when you came around the corner and you saw us in the alley, and we were just like deer in headlight.
Actually, it was our neighbor who picked you up and then brought you here home. And when I saw you, I just started crying because I was like, oh my gosh, you're here. I'm just thinking of people, because Powell's down the street and I'm thinking someone took you guys or something. And I saw you guys and you guys you came out and you guys were crying.
We were crying really hard. And I remember walking up, because we live right next door to my grandparents, my dad's father and mother. And I remember walking up the driveway and just hearing Grandpa, good, they deserve that. And he's acting like you beat us because we're crying so hard. But you didn't even have to spank us. We knew when we did something wrong, we knew, and it was like almost like the spiritual punishment that we disobeyed our parents, and we are in trouble with Creator, and we are in a big no because we disobeyed and we know better, and we still chose to not listen and things. But I'll never forget that is when Grandpa thought that you spanked us with how hard we were crying, when really it was the spirit that that spanked us, in a sense, if you want to say, that struck us and said, hey, you didn't listen to your mom. This is not okay. And so then after that, that's when we started, listening even more and being more aware of things. And then that's when I had to start learning my boundaries to the neighbor kids and saying, no, I'm going to get in trouble, and no, I can't do that. And so from there, that's when it started, for me, really being able to kind of like go, okay, no, I'm going to listen and honor my parents. I'm not going to, go into this, and I'm not going to do this, and I'm going to get punished. Or even if I did do something, I end up going and telling on myself, and I'm like, well, mom, I did this. And then I end up telling on myself because I can't deal with the guilt, and it's just like this internal, like, self-punishment, in a sense, that it's like, you don't even have to do anything. I already know I did it wrong, and I tell on myself. So
Yeah.
it was like, and then there was one other time, maybe, like, you didn't even spank me, but in my mind, you spanked me. And I can't remember what I did, but you took me to the bathroom, and you had dad's leather belt, and you put me over your lap, and you just like brought it up. And I was like, just like screaming bloody murder. And I think maybe you like barely brushed it across my butt. And
Well,
I was like screaming like you killed me.
I was laughing because I was thinking, um, well, you weren't listening. And I said, Rachel, do you want to be treated the way, I saw my family treated and in discipline? Well, okay, get the belt. And then I get the belt, and I didn't even do anything. You're like screaming like I'm beating you. And I was laughing, but my message was to, stop. But to me, that was not the best. Again, that influence of, you don't know how hard it was for me to not mimic what I saw when I grew up. And to it's so easy to just smack it, or so easy to just yell and hit you in the back of the head or something, which I saw, right? It's so easy. It was so easy to do, but it was so hard to discipline. And that was what I had to do every time, was I had to discipline my actions and like think about, what am I trying to teach? And if you guys are screaming and yelling, and then I say, stop yelling, well, that doesn't make sense, because I'm doing it too. So I knew that how important was as a parent, that I had to exemplify what I was teaching. And if I felt that, you needed discipline in some way, it was often talking about why I felt it was wrong, or why it was wrong for you. Why is this harmful? It's more about, when we spank children, it seems to me it's the fear of something. It's a fear that you're going to continue to be this way, and you might grow up to be some, I don't know, bank robber. But I think fear is the thing that we place upon our own selves and our family and our children. And I knew that. And the day when you got out of the car, my instinct, honestly, was I wanted to spank you. But it was I heard Creator say loud and clear, don't you touch them. And I backed away, and I said, okay. And I think that's where the Spirit worked with you guys. It was, you know what, it reprimanded you. It said, what you did is not right. Your mother, I was crying. I was so scared. And I was praying, please, please take care of them. And so and if it were not for the Spirit, I might have done that. but it told me clearly not to touch you. And maybe it might have been my great grandma, you know, she reprimanded my grandfather. Maybe she's reprimanded me. Don't. No, you're not going to do that. And I understand, because your spirits were so gentle, so sweet. And me, if I were to have done that, I would have made you rebellious.
Mm-hmm.
And you truly would have, I would have really made your animal spirit go wild. I would have made your soul go wild. And as bears, you would have been aggressive, right? And like, and Jacqueline's like, you know, that eagle, and she might have ran away. I don't know. You know, was gentle. So all of you had these sweet spirits, and I consciously knew if I was having children, I had to make some changes and break some cycles, because I understood where it was coming from. And I thought, I've got lots to do. Like and to top it off, my mom was in the military, so everything needed to be perfect. And you don't know how much I had to restrain myself from not saying anything when your bed's at 3 years old, fixing your bed, or 4, that it wasn't perfectly tight and stuff. Behind your back, I went and tidied it up. but meanwhile, I'm like, oh, good job. That's so amazing. But when you guys are not looking, fixing it really tight.
Bounce a quarter off of it.
But, you know, traditionally, young children were encouraged to behave properly, and through praise and awards and achievements, they were encouraged, and the community helped in that. You know, if the mama is tired, you know, they see that, they go take that baby and help, you know. But we have to, as parents, have to restrain ourselves. We need to look at ourselves and think about, why are we behaving the way we do? Why does that bother me so much? Does it really matter? Of course, if it's out of danger and you need to act real quick, you take them away from that situation, but you don't need to spank them. When children are throwing tantrums, you know, we got our little baby, your little niece, and my granddaughter, you know, when she throws a little tantrum, you know, we just look at her. We let her wait it out and express herself in that little tantrum, laying on the floor. And then we're like, are you done now? Or we do something that's fun and funny for her, and then she changes her mind that this isn't working. So, okay. And then, and we get her to laugh again, and, you know, and her parents do that same thing. So lots of playfulness, or distracting her. Hey, you know, I said you didn't get to have a candy, but would you like an orange? And would you like this? And, you know, and try to change your mind in that she doesn't need what she thinks she needs to have.
Instead of yelling too, because that's the other thing is like, no, I told you no. And so that's kind of like what you're saying is going on. That is like, you just talk and communicate.
Yeah. And other indigenous tribal people throughout the country, the world, they use work as a giving responsibilities in a ways to discipline. And, you know, and I rarely ever grounded you guys, because I'm like, what is that going to do? So I just put you to work. And, you know, and Michael, when he was 12 and older, he had to plant a tree.
Wasn't it like 15 trees or something?
12. Well, yeah,
we ended up helping.
Yeah.
But
not all at once, but I would go get the trees. And I wanted them planted anyway. So that's why I'm like, you're going to plant trees. But, you know, when you choose to discipline your child and you tell them to do something, be expected you're going to be doing it with them. So, make your choices wisely, because I was out there and
I was
having to
out there too.
we had to help him plant those trees because the ground was so hard, and had some rocks in it. So he had to plant trees, and they're so beautiful now. And when he sometimes he's an adult, and I'm like, look at these trees, and isn't it beautiful? You did this, and so. Work was another way for the discipline, but also explaining to your, teaching you to, and talking to you, why is this not right? And it was very, very, I never had to get after you about doing your homework. All of the parents who's watching, you're all going to face something different. But what I found as a parent, your children are gifts. They are precious gifts, and they come to you because you have lessons to learn. And when I was a young adult, I'm like, I used to always work on, when I was young, teenager, I'd pick a flaw of mine and work on it for one whole year. Okay. And then I'd work on another. And, by the time I need this young adult, and I'm like, I'm pretty cool. I'm good. And then I have children, and I realize I've got so much to do. Okay, I got that and that and that and that to work on, and they can bring out your weaknesses. So think about that. They're our gifts. Babies are our gifts. They're here to teach us. We're not really here to teach them. I mean, we are, but really, they're here for us. What am I going to learn? And the most important thing of all is that I feel it helped me to have an understanding of how Creator can love me. When I was young, I questioned, how could Creator ever love me? And through my flaws, and then through you all, your siblings, I am seeing the beauty in you and your power and your gifts and with your capabilities. And teenagers, I knew that was just a short phase, and then you're going to come out of it. So I was like, I wasn't fretting too much. I'm like, but that was the most time you needed more love than just a little one. You needed more. Teenagers need more love and more listening to and understanding. And I knew that by just focusing on who you are and your abilities and your gifts, that focusing on that, and how easy it was to me just keep loving you. And then I realized, if I can love my children the way I do, then I know our Creator loves me that way. And I understand now how He can love me, because I love my children so much. Then I realized, okay, children are here for us to become like our Creator. They're here for us to be humbled. They're here for us to teach us to love unconditionally. The children are here to teach us to laugh and not to take things so seriously. They have amazing gifts that they try to teach us, and humor. My little granddaughter, she loves to tease, and when you want to put her coat on, and you may be in a hurry, but she thinks it's funny by running from you and running around the house for you to catch her to get the coat on. And I have to realize she's playing, and I need to play with her, even when I'm in a hurry. But then when I'm done, like I really need to go, I just say, okay, well, I'm going to leave now, and you can follow me if you want. And she does, But there's this one example, I think, like when I was the coordinator for the Title VII program, and it was established before I got there, but we had elders, so, grandpa and grandmas there.
Mhm.
And it was the most beautiful thing because the parents, like, they took advantage of that. They really utilized those grandparents, and they would take their children. If the children misbehaved or got a bad grade, they took them to the elders. And my mom was one of them. Grandma was one of them. And they would have to go to them and tell them what they did. And if they were sent to the principal, then the parents had them talk to the elders about it. And then they just loved them and helped them understand, different ways they can behave and, to be better, but never reprimanding them, just loving them through the difficulties that they were facing. And it was the most beautiful thing I witnessed, watching us as a community help each other with our babies. And when teenagers, struggle, then, parents, we were close to each other, that we could help each other and maybe reach out. And another way for me that I felt was so important was I established relationships for you guys. So, you guys had Tawny, and Tawny was their babysitter, and became like their second mom when they got older, and they could go to her and speak to her. But I tried to establish different friendships and relationships so that you could continue to be and speak to these people, these adults that I trusted. And so those are just different ways of helping and refraining from that punishment. Those aren't our ways at all. It's to be gentle, to recognize those babies as they are new. Their spirit is so pure, and we need to keep that purity in them. We don't need to be the adversarial parents who continually abuse them. It breaks them. And as a practitioner in body and motion code, you don't know how many times I have to help these adults clear that energy because of how they were disciplined and how detrimental it is to the psyche. So that's the thing. My message is to recognize the history and where that came from, and always question things and wonder, why do we behave that way, and do research, find out where is this behavior coming from, and what relative, and who do we need to clear, and whose work do we need to work for, clear the energy from ancestral traumas. If we don't recognize these things, then we continue to behave in this way. And guess who gets to take it all and who suffers? And that is our Earth, Mother Earth. She absorbs all that energy. And if ancestors trauma and trauma, there's going to be a breaking point that how could she hold that energy? She can't. And we're seeing that. And so we as human beings need to look at ourselves and question our own behaviors and why we behave the way we do, and fix that, take care of it, release it, let go of that, because it does not work. And establish communities who can help you. There's lots of support groups. But just remember, those babies are new. And, when they're 3, we think, oh, they should be grown up. They're still babies. When you want children to play nicely, learn how to share, you know what? You have to play with them to teach them that. You can't, a lot of parents just let the kids play and expect them to just play and play kindly and share. And but they have no experience, and then they get in trouble because now you're punishing them because they don't have an understanding that they didn't share, or they took a toy away from someone. They didn't know that. So it's so important as parents that we play with the children to teach them how to share, to teach them how to behave in a good way. And, as a long time ago, I used to be a pre-K teacher, and that was the very thing I would teach, giving them skills, different ways to solve problems. Spanking is just a temporary fix. What it takes longer is to actually teach them and give them take that moment, have an opportunity to teach and to speak to them and help them understand. And by doing that, then we can change and we can go back to our traditional ways. And if we don't know our traditional ways, then start praying, ask Creator, and be specific. You have to be specific in your prayers. You can't just say, help me to be a better person. Well, no. Creator, I am having a difficult time with this child and I don't understand them. I don't know what's happening, but I need to see them in your eyes. I need to see them in your lens so that I have an understanding and I can be patient. I'm not being patient, and the first thing I want to do is yell. I need help, Creator. Step in, please, because I don't want to harm this spirit. And when we can look at it in that way, He will help you. Ancestors will help you. You don't know, again, like I said, your traditions, you have to rely on Creator. And that was my thing. I didn't know. I had to figure out ways that I was going to make changes and change cycles. And my only way was to listen to the Creator and to hear the inspirations and be able to maneuver, being a parent. And if I didn't know what I was going to do, then, when I've asked you guys, I need you to go clean your room, and then you question, well, what if I don't? Specifically, I'm talking about Michael. I said, I need you to do da 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 da. Your job was to clean the garage. Oh, and then he's 12, and he's like, well, what if I don't? And I'm like, cool. And in my mind, I don't know what I'm going to do, but I wanted him to believe I knew. So I just looked at him with my stern eyes and just said, well, you don't want to know what I'm going to do. So it's your choice. You decide what you want to do. I'm not going to force you, but you don't want to know what I have in store. And
that was scary.
And then I just shut the door, and he's like, I'll clean the garage. But in my mind, I'm like, I don't know what I'm going to do. I have no idea. Because I have to come up with something. Please, 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 Michael, listen to what I just asked you to
do. You're going to call my bluff.
So it's, with babies, gentle teaching. And I think that's what takes time. We don't want to take the time. We want to watch TV. We want to relax. When we're tired and worked all day, we want to, we just want our own time. But we chose to have children. So no, that's your role. Now, when you choose to have them, your life is not yours anymore. You chose that, and it's got to be about the children now. And you got to live your life. You got to do the things you needed to do. But life is not over. You still can go do the things you want to and bring them along with you and teaching. So that's just a brief message, alternatives. We don't go back to the traditional ways. Remember, the babies have a special link to the spirit world, and we cannot close that by our own actions and our own weaknesses and place that upon them. We have to be consciously aware of what we do. Oos.
Thank you. That was beautiful. I don't have anything else to say over that. So it was really good. I think what brought us into that was just looking at the world and then sitting down and saying, it was the star children. It was talking about being born and the star children and leading into that spirit realm and the Star Nation people and coming here and then going into children. So it was a
Mm.
perfect rollover into that from last week's discussion. So thank you everyone for tuning in and stay tuned. Live videos are every Tuesday at 11 a.m. Pacific time, 2 p.m. Eastern time, and then 8 p.m. if you're in the UK. So we'll stay tuned and have more stuff coming up for you. So thank you for paying attention and listening and taking notes. And if you ever have any certain topics or things that you would like to be like to listen and be educated on, you can always send me a message on Rising Warriors Rachael Kulei, and I can get those things set up for you guys. So if there's anything that you would like to hear this coming up year, feel free to reach out and let me know. Until then, have a good day.
Thank
Thank you.
you.
Oos.